George Herbert Mead. He's a sociologist, pure sociologist. Mead believed and taught that every bit of our social self or our personality is derived from our social interactions. So if you could take a person and when they're born and completely detach them from people, which of course you couldn't, they would die. But if you could, there would be no personality. There would be no sense of self in that person because it's all derived from social interactions. Now, a key word, and this is on the screen eventually, but I won't go ahead and give it now. A key word or key phrase in understanding Mead's perception of how we develop the sense of self is the phrase looking glass, the looking glass self. It's not original with him. It came from another sociologist named Charles Horton Cooley. And so Cooley developed this idea of the looking glass self, but then Mead kind of expanded it a little bit, and that's why I want to go ahead and mention it up front. Looking glass is an old term that refers to a mirror. My grandmother, I can remember my grandmother, every once in a while saying, "Has anybody seen my looking glass?" Now that sounded like what she wanted is binoculars or so, but it'd be like a compact mirror. And so basically, our sense of self, our personality, our social self derives from, we put ourselves in the other person's shoes and look back on ourselves, or to put it another way, the way I see myself is a reflection of how I think you see me. Did that make sense? And so in a sense, all of you people in this room are a mirror. And when I look at you, I reflect back on myself how I think you see me, and then that's where my sense of self comes from. And so the personality or the social self is derived completely from the social interaction. And so we'll come back to that in a second, but I want to go ahead and throw that out there. Self, he refers to the self. Now, Mead is a little bit difficult to understand because of what he's saying, but then also because of the terminology that he uses. Because his name is Mead, he's going to talk about the self, and his two parts of the self are the I and the me. So you got to listen really carefully to see if I'm saying Mead or me, or if, when I say me, if I'm just talking about me, or if I'm talking about me. And I'll try to emphasize it so you'll know the difference when we're talking about these things. But self is the part of the individual's personality that's composed of self-awareness and self-image. So that's basically the personality. And so we become self-aware, and our self-image is based entirely on our social interactions, and at least part of that is the looking glass self. And so Mead saw self, and again, that's the same as personality, as a product of social experience, which meant four things. Four things. Without social interactions, we would have no personality. We would have no sense of self. And that meant four things. First, the self develops only with social experience. Okay. So your sense of self, self-awareness and self-image, derives entirely from your interactions with other people. All right, so the self. Second, the social experience is an exchange of symbols, because this is a symbolic interactionist way of looking at things, and so everything's a symbol. Right now we're operating under the symbols of teacher-student, and I'm seeing myself as a reflection of how you see me, and it has to do with those symbols. And so if you think I'm doing a good job, I feel good about myself. Does that make sense? But if you think I'm not doing a good job, then my whole sense of self and my self-image takes a hit. All right? And it's an exchange of symbols. Third, understanding intention requires imagining a situation from another's point of view. For this number 3, understanding intention requires, we've all had an experience, right, where you've gotten into a conflict or an argument with a friend, and then when you sat down and talked about it, you realized that it was just all a big misunderstanding. And so there may be, if I'm seeing myself the way I think you see me, I'm also judging your intentions of why are you looking at me that way. And so I have to put myself in the role of the other. So I'm putting myself in the role of the other. In other words, I'm putting myself in your shoes and looking back at myself. Okay? That's the role of the other. Now, this is kind of just three phrases to kind of keep in mind. Significant other is really a coolie term on the looking glass self. The significant other is not your lover. I mean, it could be, but the significant other is that one person or that small group of people. It could be two or three. It's never a large group. But that one person or that small group of people who what you think they think of you outweighs what everybody else thinks of you. Okay? Because, the looking glass self, I'm seeing myself the way I think you see me, but we all have a person or a very, very small group of people who how we think they see us outweighs how I think you see me. That's the significant other. The generalized other is a term that Mead does use. It's his fourth stage of development, and it has to do with culture, which when we get to that point, I'll explain it some more. But the role of the other is this idea that in order for me to see myself the way I think you see me, I put myself in your shoes and look at your intentions and look back on me. So I had to take the role of the other to see how I like it. The best example of this, which Mead uses, is with small children who like to play dress-up. And so small children might go into their parents' closet and they put on their parents' clothes, and in a sense, they're taking the role of the other and seeing how they like it. And they're seeing themselves based on that role of the other. But the bottom line, all this comes out of the fact that our sense of self, which is self-awareness and self-image, all comes from social interaction. Okay, we're not born with any type of personality or sense of self. It's derived from our society. So there's the looking glass self that I already mentioned. And then 4, by taking the role of the other, then we become self-aware. All right? And there's 2 parts of the self. The I and the me. This has nothing to do and there's no correlation between Mead's sense of self, the I and the me, and Freud's id, ego, and superego. Don't get those confused. They have nothing to do with each other. All right? But now, here's kind of how it works. If we back up just a little bit with the looking glass self. On Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I have 3 classes back to back. So I'm in this room, from 10 o'clock to about 1:15. All right? Let's say that during this class, everybody's really, really excited to be here. So, if you're excited to be here, look at me like this. All right, see? So everybody's excited. And so let's say this class goes really, really well. I feel like everybody's engaged. People are laughing. They like my jokes. And this class goes really, really well. Okay? Now, based on the looking glass self, I see myself the way I think you see me. And so if this class is going well, how do I feel about myself? Pretty good, right? Man, I'm looking good today. My hair's, I'm having a good day. That sense of self-awareness and self-image is good. So let's say between classes I have to go to the restroom. So I leave class and I go to the restroom. And while I'm gone, when I come back to class, the next class is here. And surprisingly, miracle of all miracles, the entire class is here and they're all on time. All right? And so when I walk into the door, the room is full with the next class. Now, I'm feeling pretty good about myself, right? Because we had a good experience, and I think you think I'm a good teacher and all that kind of stuff. You follow me so far? So I'm, I'm a lot of self-confidence. So I walk into the second class. Everybody's already in here. I walk in the door. I'm feeling pretty good, man. It's going to be a good day. And between the door and the front of the room, I trip and I fall. What happens to my sense of self at that moment? It plummets. Because I see myself the way I think you see me, and so now that class, I think they see me as clumsy, and it ruins the rest of the class, right? I get up, I do a psychological self-defense mechanism and make a joke, about first day on my new legs, ha ha ha, or something to try to deflect the embarrassment. And then when I go and I start to take roll and I open the folder and all my papers go everywhere, you know, and I'm trying to pick them up. When I bend over to pick them up, I hit my head on the table. Right? Have you ever had something like that happen where it just it just snowballs, right? And everything just kind of gets worse. And then I start to teach, and of course, since my self-image, my self-awareness is not very good, man, I'm stumbling around. I can't remember what I'm saying, you know, and it's just, right? So my whole self-image goes down based on how I think other people see me. Now, in a 50-minute class, what may happen is, you know, the first class went real well. My self-image is high. My self-awareness is high. Second class, I embarrass myself, so my self-image, my self-awareness plummets. But we got to have class, and so I fumble through all the, you know, irregularities or the oddities or the uncomfortableness that I feel, and then eventually, by the time the class is over, it's kind of, you know, I'm kind of back on my game. You know, eventually, I get myself together, and I start feeling better about myself. Are you following me? I mean, have you had something similar? You know, now, the question is, we all know what caused my self-image to plummet, because, you know, I see myself. What in a 50-minute class period caused that self-confidence or that self-awareness to come back in 50 minutes? Because, you know, you're still the same class, and I still think you see me as clumsy. All right, see, I hadn't really told you, so that's why you don't know the answer. All right. It's the significant other. So here's what I mean by that. Let's say in my example that my wife is that significant other person. How I think, and that's the key word, how I think she sees me outweighs how I think everybody else sees me. Does that make sense? And so if I think she sees me as competent, you know, relatively nice looking, nice guy, good personality, if I think that's how she sees me, well then temporarily my self-image is based on how I think you see me. And so temporarily, the first class just reemphasized what the significant other thinks. Then I walk into this class, the second class, and I trip. Temporarily my self-awareness goes down. But eventually that significant other kicks in. And I see myself how that person sees me, and so the self-awareness returns. Now, the opposite of that is true. If my significant other, if I think she sees me as stupid, clumsy, can't do anything right, you know, don't know why she even married me, that kind of stuff, then no matter how good I'm doing and no matter how much praise the class has given me, I'm going to have a low self-image because I'm having that thought in my mind instead of yours. Yours is temporary. Does that make any sense? I mean, this is why, and maybe you went to school with people like this. You could have had a classmate who was the best athlete in school, got all kinds of praise, made good grades as well, or the best musician on the honor roll, made straight A's, everything going for them. But you knew them, and you knew they struggled with their self-image because no matter how hard they tried, they can just never please Dad, you know, or Mom, or whoever that significant other says you're no good, you know, wish you'd never been born, all that kind of stuff. So no matter how much praise they get from everybody else, and they should have a high self-image, their self-image hurts because the significant other, they see themselves the way that significant other sees them. All right, so that's kind of what he's talking about there. But then the self has these two parts, the I and the me. Okay, the I is the part of the self that is active and spontaneous. The I is that authentic part of you. All right, the me is the looking glass self. The me is how I think everybody sees me. So you got the I and the me. And so they're working in relationship with each other. And through our social interactions, the I and the me are at work. And the self-awareness, self-image develops as a result. And here's a couple illustrations of that. I'll use class, you know, me teaching first of all. Okay. If I'm teaching class and while I'm teaching, I notice that there's a group of students in the back who aren't paying attention. They're laughing, they're cutting up, they're texting, they're sending notes. They're not paying attention to anything that I say. Okay. That strikes at the me. That's the looking glass. And so if I'm teaching and there's students who aren't paying attention and I'm seeing myself the way I think they see me, well then how do I view me at that moment? I'm boring, insignificant, irrelevant. Now the I, that part that's really me, wants to respond to that. Because no one wants to be irrelevant and boring. And so the me is saying, you're not a good teacher, you're boring, they're not paying attention to you. The I, that part that's really me, says, I am too important, you got to pay attention to me. And so the I says, you need to get their attention. And so the I says, you need to yell and scream at them. And say, you got to listen, what are you doing? You got to listen to me. You know, you can't be in it. And so the I wants to lose it on them. But immediately the me kicks back in and tells the I, hey, if you do that, everybody's going to think you're really, really weird. They're going to think that, you know, you've lost control. So you see the me again? And so then the I says, okay, I'll figure out another way. Maybe after class I'll talk. And so through this kind of interaction between the I and the me, eventually they reach a compromise of some kind. Right? And so let's say in this situation, the me or the I wins, and I yell and scream and just lose it on those students. But as a result of me yelling and screaming and losing it, they get quiet and they listen. Well, then the next time I'm in that situation, what's the I and the me going to conclude? The way to solve it is to yell and to scream. And so you see, after a while, all of a sudden, my sense of self, my self-awareness, my self-image, my personality is, you know, man, Kevin's a good guy, but boy, every once in a while, man, he just goes off. You know, and so, huh?
You can see that on Red Microphone.
Yeah. You know, and so before you come to class every day, you ask the class that I had previously, it's like, okay, what kind of mood's he in today? So you see how that's your personality? On the other hand, if in that case the I and the me conclude the best way to do this is maybe after class in a calm, rational way, pull them together, you know, and that works, then my sense of self, my self-awareness, my self-image, does that make sense? Now let's reverse it. You have a test in class, not a take-home test, but you're having a test in class, okay? The me of you, all right, the me says, you need to make a good grade on that test. If you make an A on that test, you know, within when you get home, you can put that test. When you get that test back, you can go home, put it on the refrigerator, and everybody will be so proud of you. Everybody will think you're really, really smart if you make an A. So you see the looking glass self? If I make an A, I see myself as smart, and everybody. And so the me says, you got to make a good grade because then everybody will like you. The I, that part that's really you, says, well, you know, if that's the case, then we better do whatever it takes to make an A, even if that means we cheat. You know, we got to make an A, so the I says, we got to make an A no matter what. And then the me says, well, yeah, but hang on a minute, because if you cheat and get caught, that's really going to make you look bad. People are going to think you're not very smart, you know. And so the I says, okay, well, then let's study real hard, and then we'll make a good grade, and we'll feel really good about ourselves. All right, so the I and the me are in, you know, now, if the me wins in that situation, and you make a good grade by studying hard, but then everybody loves you, and you think if the I and your personality, if your I wins and you cheat and you get away with it, you don't get caught, it doesn't make you feel bad. Well, then all of a sudden you start to develop a personality, social awareness, self-awareness, self-image that says always look for a shortcut. There's always an easy, you know, and so all through life you cut corners, and your personality, your sense of self, has developed. All right. Now let's say one more illustration. If one day in class, you come to class, and since this is the first class of the day, at least for me, I know it's 10 o'clock already, but you walk into class, you notice that I've got like 5 dozen Krispy Kreme donuts. You know, and you love Krispy Kreme donuts. And so I asked everybody come up here and, you know, grab Krispy Kreme donut. So you take a donut, you know. Let's say for whatever reason during class we got to take a little 5-minute break before we finish up class, and so I say, okay, you know, we'll take a 5-minute break, but you know, some more donuts up here. If anybody wants them, come get them. And you come up here and you notice a whole box of a dozen donuts. The I says, you're really hungry. You ought to just eat that whole dozen. You deserve it. You're a good guy. The me says, if you eat that whole box of donuts, everybody's going to think you're a pig. They're going to think something's wrong with you. And the I says, but I'm really hungry. And the me says, yeah, but you can't do that. You just can't gorge yourself on donuts. Everybody's going to think you're... And so the I says, okay, what if I just take 3 and hide them in my pocket and walk out the door? And the me says, oh, that's a pretty good idea. Let's do that. You see. And so through the I and the me, what people think of me and then how I see myself, the self or the personality starts to develop. All right. Now this happens according to Mead. I want to get to a chart that says the same thing. But this happens. The I and the me are at work as we take the role of the other, and we move through 4 stages. Through 4 stages. Okay. The first stage, which is infancy, is called imitation. Basically, at infancy, you notice in the first box up there, the green box, that the self has no ability to take on the role of anybody. Okay? And so everything that an infant does is really just imitation. They have no sense of self-awareness or self-image. So you play peekaboo with a baby, it'll play peekaboo back with you, but it has no idea what it's doing. It's just imitating you. Does that make sense? There's no sense of self. Once the child reaches around toddler age a little bit, now all of a sudden they move into what he called play. So the first stage is imitation, the second stage is play. And at play, the self can take on the role of one other person in one situation. That's play. And so you got kids toddler's age who play, and they dress up, they play make-believe, they play. But if you notice as they're playing, they're only doing one thing in one situation. And here's what I mean by that. If you've ever had to keep kids, if you've got 2 toddlers in a room, regardless if one's a boy, one's a girl, regardless of anything else, if you've got 2 toddlers in a room, they will play together pretty well. You stick a 3rd toddler in that room, and what happens? Man, somebody's being left out. There's chaos because, you see, they can only do one thing in one situation, and so if there's 3 of them, you stick a 4th one in the room, what happens? Yeah, they pair off, and everybody, you're thinking they're all 4 playing together well, but if you watch, you see 2 of them playing together and 2 of them playing together. You stick a 5th one in the room, you got the chaos again because there's only one. And then when they play, you'll notice, let's say that Tabitha and my family are all really good friends, and we're the same age, Tabitha and I, okay? And we're 3, 4, somewhere around that, maybe 3 or 4 years old. And so we're at each other's house all the time, all right? And so we play together. We're playmates. And so we say, let's play house. You be the mommy, I'll be the daddy. And so we play house for a little while. After a while, that gets boring, and so I say, let's play cops and robbers. You be the cop, I'll be the robber. And then we'll play that for a while. After a while, we'll stop playing that. Let's play school. You be the teacher, I'll be the student. You see how every time you're playing, there's one role in one situation. What you will not have 3 or 4-year-olds doing is saying, let's play life. You be the mommy and the teacher and the cop. I'll be the daddy and the robber and the student. You see, because that's way too confusing. One situation, one role, one situation. Now the socialization process will kick in something like this. If we're 3 years old and we're playing house, and I say, let's play house. You be the daddy, I'll be the mommy. First couple times we do that, we may get away with it. But after we get a little bit older and we say, let's play house, you be the daddy, I'll be the mommy, and our parents see what we're doing, what are they going to do? Wait. You got the roles backwards. So you see the socialization process? You got the roles backwards, and they'll straighten it out eventually, kind of thing. But you're taking the role of the other and looking back, and so, looking back on yourself. All right, that's play. Once you get around elementary age school, me said you move to the next stage, which is games. And the difference between play and games is rules. Rules. All right. At the game situation, or now again, elementary school, children had the ability to take on many other roles, but still only one situation. All right, so let's use sports. It's really kind of the best way. to get this done. When I was growing up, you did not play organized sports until you were 8 years old or had finished first grade. And I think part of that was based on this theory. Nowadays, we start our kids, this is my own opinion, we start our kids playing organized sports way too young. You got 3 and 4 year olds playing soccer and football and t-ball and all kinds of stuff. Way too, now, at that age, at 3 and 4 years of old, the kids playing sports, it's all about the parents at that age. It has nothing to do with the kids. Because you could take a ball, throw it out into a yard and get, 15 4-year-olds together just in the backyard, and they would have just as much fun playing as they would getting up early on a Saturday morning, putting on cute uniforms and going to the park. It's all about parents at that age. Right? But have you ever been to a 4-year-old soccer game? Where is everybody in relation to the ball? If they're playing, now you've got the 1 or 2 stragglers who are over there picking daisies, but the kids who are actually engaged in playing soccer at 4 years of age, they are all around the ball. It's a blob. Why? 1 row, 1 situation. Soccer's about kicking the ball. And so they're all around. No matter how much you yell at them, no matter how loud you scream, no matter how many times you stop and tell them all to spread out and tell them again what a midfielder is and all that kind of stuff, as soon as the whistle blows, whoom. Yeah. Now, you ever been to a 4-year-old t-ball game? This is really funny because the dads are having strokes, lining up first base, second base, shortstop. As soon as the kid hits the t-ball off the tee, what happens? They all run in the ball. And the dads are going, no, 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 no. Why? 1 row, 1 situation. T-ball is about getting the ball when it's hit. So as soon as the ball is hit, whoom, they all go. Now, something magically appears or occurs when they get about, now I know for some people it's younger, I know, but around 6, 7, 8 years of age, all of a sudden, Johnny understands, okay, I'm playing first base. My friend is on third base. When the ball is hit to the third baseman, I don't run to the ball. I run away from the ball. And then my friend picks it up and throws it to me. And then next inning, I'll be third baseman. And then the next inning, I'll be out in the outfield. You see, now they understand many, many, many roles, but still just one situation is baseball. And it has nothing to do with they've been playing for 4 years. It could be the very first time they've ever even seen a baseball, and an 8-year-old is going to pick that up very, very quickly. Soccer's the same way. All of a sudden, Julie's going to understand, okay, my role is when my friend is kicking the ball to run around the other way, and she'll kick it to me. And it has nothing to do with they've been playing since they were 3 years old. All right, so it's games. Now, the final stage, as you see, is what he calls the generalized other. This is the maturity thing. And at this stage, you take on many, many roles in many, many situations. Now, the generalized other is culture. So basically, culture becomes the looking glass. So at the generalized other, I see myself not so much on how any group sees me, but I see myself the way I think that culture as a whole or society as a whole sees me. Now, here's how it works, all right? Let me see. I'm trying to see. I want to pick on. I'll pick. How old are you, Jessica? All right, 18. Now, Jessica has not yet quite reached generalized other yet. Okay? Kelly, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
39.
All right. Kelly has. Now, here's how I know. Jessica is at the 1 role many situations. And her 1 role, are you a full-time student before I do this? Her 1 role in life is she's a college student. Now, you have a job? Okay, she works. But when she's working, she's a college student. Do you live at home or you live on your own? All right, you have brothers and sisters and everybody at home? All right, so when she's at home, she's a sibling, she's a daughter, but she's a college student. So she's got many, many roles, but it's 1 situation, college students. That make sense? All right, Kelly, on the other hand, you have children, right? She have 4 children. Okay, when you're a mom, can you be a college student also? Or you got to be a mom? You got to be a mom. I mean, she's going to be sitting down trying to do homework, and all of a sudden her kids are going to need something, and she can't be a student. She's got to be a mom. Are you working anywhere? Yeah, all right. So when she's at work, she can't be doing homework. And people at work are not going to see her as a college student. They're seeing her as a worker or a mom. So she's got many, many roles in many, many different situations. Does that make sense? Now, self-esteem, self-awareness, or self-image comes into play this way, and I'll use myself as an example here. I've got an idea based on the socialization process. I've got an idea what this society says a 45-year-old white male, husband, father, teacher, minister should be like. Does that make sense? And so I see myself on how I think I measure up to that. You see, that's the generalized other. Society says, this is how you're... So it's not so much what you think of me anymore, it's what I think society thinks of me. That's how I view my self-awareness. So if I feel like I'm where I should be, then I've got a good self-awareness, good self-image. If I feel like society's kind of saying, man, you're not amounting to much. You got to get your act together. Then, I make changes, I do whatever. But it's many, many roles in many, many situations. Does that make any sense? All right, so Mead. That's George Mead, the I and the me. And at each one of these four stages, that I and me, are there in association with each other. Okay?